Welcome to AI TV. We're broadcasting live from AI Expo Africa 2019, and it gives me a great pleasure to welcome Andrew from IBM here in South Africa, who heads up their AI and automation sales operation. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Nick. It's a pleasure to be here.
Andrew, we're at a applied AI conference, so this is the real world of AI in action. With business, with suppliers. It's trade orientated, so everything we can see here today is real. And I guess IBM have, a track record in this space. So the original grand challenge of a computer versus mankind, so the chess challenge that we all know. Then you famously the Jeopardy Grand Challenge,
yes,
and then
was watching.
I think IBM have that reputation of really accepting and excelling at these challenges. Where are you now with these challenges?
Well, thanks for asking that, Nick. We set ourselves those challenges to give our research team something to aim at, a moonshot, if you like. And then clearly we're a commercial organization, and the idea is to commercialize the technologies that are developed off the back of that. The grand challenge that followed Watson and followed the quest to win the Jeopardy game show was to create a machine that could debate a human in language, in real time, in front of an audience. And I don't know if you were part of a debating club at any point in time, or whether you've just had debates as you've gone through life, but in a competitive debate situation, you're told what your subject has to be and which side you're going to be taking. You're given a few minutes to prepare your opening arguments. You make an opening statement. Your opposition makes their opening statement. You get a chance to come up with rebuttal arguments to challenge the other's point of view, and then there's closing statements, and then the audience is asked what they think and how far their views have moved. So that's what we've been working on for some time with IBM Research, in particular the research team in the Israel lab, and we went live with this and demonstrated it in San Francisco in February, where we debated a world champion human in front of a live audience under monitored debate conditions, and the results were pretty extraordinary.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people look at these technologies. I mean, I think when, like, for example, a chatbot, and I mean, I think chatbots generally work quite well in a narrowly constrained environment.
Yeah.
Whereas a debate, I mean, can go anywhere. So, I mean, how is your technology allowing essentially to pit its wits against a human? Because it has to go and trawl huge amounts of data to learn and understand that topic in a fraction of minutes.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I mean, you use the term narrow to describe chatbots, and I think we can appreciate that chatbots are narrow AI. I think there was a period in the evolution of chatbots where our human expectation was that these conversations we would have with machines would be more lucid, more engaging than they have been. And we've got half a century of great sci-fi movies and great fiction to thank for that. But we all expect to be able to talk to these machines, and of course, mostly chatbots are just giving a scripted response, and there are a limited number of scripted responses they can give. The problem with a debater is, of course, that the field is much wider than a narrow response for a chatbot, as you rightly say. And the technology requires stripping through millions of documents to find supporting arguments and data that support an argument, to pull those passages of text out, and then to reconstruct them into a summary that is coherent in English, that obeys the laws of the language in terms of grammar and syntax, and putting those arguments forward. So there's quite a bit that's going on there in that debater, if you like. It's got to listen and understand the opposition's point of view. It's got to develop an argument of its own, and it's got to turn that in and synthesize that into speech. So
let's turn that back to now the world of business. So maybe you can give our audience some examples then where this fundamental research that you've been doing at IBM, and also you're famous for the groundbreaking work you've done, how can that now be turned around into a meaningful business application? Can you give us some examples?
Well, thanks for asking that. We are in fact commercializing technologies that are coming out of the Project Debater program. We will be coming out with a cloud-based solution called Speech by Crowd. Where there are large numbers of differing points of view in that are not easily counted as in simple numbers and simple structured information. The ability to sort of take the pulse of an organization, if you like, if I think of the term, the wisdom of crowds.
Yeah.
What is the wisdom of the crowd? Unless you conduct an omnibus survey and have somebody go out and knock door to door and say, what do you think, Nick, and what does your neighbor think, and so on, and then aggregate all that information, summarize it, identify whether there are common themes, or all those common themes up and stack them into and cluster them and so on. That's a lot of work. And typically there's a time lag between taking the sample and preparing the report. And generally the sample is relatively small. I used to be in this industry. I know that a national omnibus survey might question only maybe 2,000 households to produce a national level survey. But this technology would allow you to take the wisdom of everybody. And it wouldn't matter that they were expressing their points of view or their arguments in words, because that's the way we express ourselves, because this thing will understand what those words mean. We'll strip it out and identify where there are common themes, and we'll cluster them, and it will do it very, very quickly. So it'll give businesses the opportunity to understand what their own employees are thinking, what their employees are motivated by, what the issues are. It will give governments the chance to understand what citizens are thinking and doing.
Yeah. I think Boris Johnson would like to know to use that technology right now, right?
Well, I imagine it would be applicable in many countries in the world, not just in the UK.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting, Andrew. I mean, in terms of the show itself, so obviously you've come here to speak, and I was sitting in on your talk very briefly the other day, and obviously you were talking about a very similar topic. I think it was Sophia, the robot, and how that's how perhaps we're innovating ourselves into a trench there with spending a lot of time trying to make robots look like humans. For me personally, I'm not sure that's the way to go, but what are IBM right now doing in terms of business applications leveraging AI that you can literally buy from you right now? Give us some examples.
I mean, I think we'd like to think that we triggered this market in some ways. We democratized the technology that we developed for the Jeopardy game show, the Watson technology, and technologies that are older than that. We've made them available as cloud services. We've broken them down so that they can be consumed in microscopic amounts almost, and paid for at less. I think the lowest level we've dropped to is you can get 400 API calls for $1 in using the chatbot. Now, if you've got a very small operation and you've got a very low need for volumes, it's still, you can still have the best or some of the best AI on the planet working for your business, no matter what your budget is. So we've gone, as I say, our model has been to democratize this, to make a market for this, to make it available, and cloud was the way to do that quickly. Breaking it into microservices that people can compose into applications was the way to do that quickly. And charging it on a scalable basis was the way to make it affordable for everybody.
Oh, fantastic. I mean, clearly, cloud is the way to go, right? I mean, and when you start getting, you think back maybe not so long ago, the idea of getting a service from IBM where it was like less than $1. I mean, maybe that's a very interesting change that you've had to go through as a large traditional enterprise. Which I think you're over 100 years old now, right?
Yes, more than 100 years
old.
So
at the birth of this technology, essentially. So, but it's so interesting that now an enterprise organisation like yourself has moved to that point where consumption is cents on the dollar now. I mean that's where we're heading, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean what I quoted you there was the price of Watson Assistant Standard, just to be very clear. But the commercialization of all these technologies, and I think it's particularly relevant in Africa, and I'm going to hit on why that is. But let's take quantum computing. At the moment, we have the Q series computer. We are going to make the quantum computing capability available by cloud again. That's the way to democratize it. There are serious technical and practical challenges to operating a quantum computer, not least of which it needs to be at close to absolute zero, and most people don't have the capability to do that. So we'll have that in our data center sitting at close to zero and able to do the workloads that are required. But we'll allow other people to utilize that over the internet. So that's this is our model, as you say, making it affordable, make it accessible. And I said, why is that important to Africa? Well, it's important to Africa because what what it means is that any African business can get their hands on the best technology in the world. It's not about setting up a giant data center of your own. I mean, there's a joke that friends don't let friends build data centers. Don't build a data center if you don't need one, and only the largest of enterprises would ever want to have a data center anyway. Take the services, consume them as services, and pay for them as you go. And that model means that we can promote innovation in a country like in the African continent, where organizations are starting small and want to move fast.
Well, Andrew, it's great to have you at the show. I mean, I'm not sure. I don't think you were here last year. I mean, I think it's your first.
This is a fantastic show, and Nick, I love what you've done here. You've created a community. You've created a forum. You've created a meeting point for everyone in this game in Africa, and it's fantastic. You can see the development from year to year, and I can't wait for next year.
Well, brilliant, Andrew. Many thanks for joining us on AI TV, and looking forward to having IBM and yourself and maybe some of your other colleagues join us next year. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Nick.